What's going on, people? Welcome to an Emotion Football live stream. My name is Alam, and today we got the second iteration of our series. We have an offseason preview series where we're looking at every team in the NFL and kind of what their outlook would be going into the offseason, what their goals might be, what's possible and what's not possible. I'm going to throw this up here for a second. So we did the first stream yesterday. It was the whereas no contenders that can build Ravens, Bills, and Lions. And we're going to do the second stream today: Broncos, Packers, Texans, and Buccaneers. These are going to be the good teams that can build. So these are playoff teams, teams that did show some good things, but ultimately didn't get it done in the playoffs. Teams we probably didn't take seriously as Super Bowl contenders. Just kind of talking through their situation, how they might look to build, and highlighting the fact that they are actually pretty well set up to do that. But I see Genwell is in here. Good to see you, Genwell. Okay, if you hang around until the end, when this kind of devolves into more of like a free discussion thing, I have a thing I want to catch up with you about since the Super Bowl, because I haven't talked to you since the Super Bowl. But I see King is in here. I see Mange is in here. Good to talk to you guys. So we're gonna get right into it with the Broncos. So where are we at? Where's the depth chart? Where are the Broncos? The Broncos should be somewhere here. Okay, here's the Broncos. Now, why have I categorized them as a good team that can build? We're gonna look at DVOA again. Not a perfect stat by any means, but if you have to look to something to kind of capture whether a team is good or not, I do like this one. So the Broncos offensively had the 15th ranked EPA, and defensively the number one EPA. So, that kind of averages out to be, a team that's going to make the playoffs, but not particularly good. That's what they had last year. Then when we look at their team here, if you think about what they're bringing back, they're basically bringing back the entire team except their starting running back, who, mind you, it's not like Javonte Williams was carrying things for the running game anyways. It was kind of a committee. You got the fullback, you got the nose tackle, and you got one of their linebackers. So I say this all to say the Broncos are bringing back quite a bit of their team. All the main pieces. So you look at Sutton, you look at their key offensive linemen, obviously their quarterback, huge parts of the team. They're bringing all of them back. And then defensively, you got the defense that they had some interest. So they averaged out at number one for EPA. They had some very strong performances, some really, really good games. Then they had weird games like the one against the Browns on Monday Night Football when Jameis threw for almost 500 yards. I think it kind of showed that with some injuries, the performance can drop down quite a bit. But for the most part, the Broncos were a pretty impressive defense, and they're bringing back the key members of the team. You got Sertan and Riley Moss are going to be back. Jaquan McMillan. I think this color means that he's an exclusive rights free agent, which means he's going to be back. Nick Benito, who's killing it on the edge. Zach Allen did really well on the interior of the line. So the Broncos are basically bringing back their entire team. It's all in 2K. Oh, for sure. I can understand. They should focus on adding weapons for Bo Nix. This is true. So we've kind of talked through the fact that they were a good team last year, made the playoffs, looked good against the Bills in the playoffs for about one quarter. And then we saw that they're frankly just not there. But they're bringing back most of their team. They're going to have opportunities to add to it. And then when we go here to look at where they're at in terms of spending, the Broncos, I think, are in the middle of the pack. Yeah, so this orange line is literally the average, and the Broncos are underneath it. For those of you guys who weren't here yesterday for the last stream, I got a chart here that I actually made. I put it together because this stat isn't available. I got a chart here that shows where every team is at in terms of guaranteed money. That's like the main thing for every team in the NFL. The salary cap is so flexible in terms of who gets paid when. You can pay players to play for you this year, but you can pay them in 3 years. All kinds of flexibility. So the whole thing about money is that you can move it whenever you want. What really matters is how invested are you in your team. The Broncos are about middle of the pack. So that's not bad considering the fact that they made the playoffs last year. They have a ton of dead money. So this is the thing. Part of the reason they're here, not lower, is because they have Russell Wilson's dead money. They're literally getting no value from that money. So they know that they can spend more in the future. So the Broncos are going to have opportunities to get better. They have, where we're going to pull the depth chart up. They have Oh. Yeah, for real. When you see how low the Steelers are, it's hilarious. Um, hot take: Broncos will miss the postseason next year. Okay, so that's definitely possible. I guess what we're kind of establishing here is just like who's positioned to have a good offseason. And my point with the Broncos is when you consider the fact that they're not up there in terms of money spent and they're bringing back most of a playoff team last year, they have an opportunity. They're set up to get better. Now they could definitely do it. They could definitely not do it. They could get worse if they make bad financial decisions, if they make bad personnel assessments and get the wrong players in. That'll definitely mess all of this up. But they're positioned to have a good offseason. Their opportunity is there. It's a matter of whether they capitalize on it. But in terms of what I think they could do, I think they have enough in the secondary. If I was them, I would try to bolster the pass rush, get some more depth. And then offensively, like Jared was saying, I would try to get some difference makers offensively because this is the thing. I think they have some good players, but they don't have any difference makers. Like, there's not a difference maker in the running back room. There's not a difference maker at the tight end spot. Cortland Sutton is a pretty good player, but he's not a difference maker. So that's what the Broncos need. I think they need difference makers on offense, and I think they need some depth in the specifically in terms of players that can get to the quarterback, especially in the division that they're in. They're all going up against the Chiefs twice a year. They're competing against the Chiefs for the division. You just saw, I mean, you've seen it now, 2 Super Bowls, what the recipe is to beat the Chiefs. Not to say that having a great pass rush isn't the recipe to beat anybody, but you see what it takes. And I think the Broncos definitely got to make those 2 moves. They could trade for Cooper Kupp. They absolutely could trade for Cooper Kupp. He would be a good safety blanket kind of a receiver for Bo Nix. But yeah, man, the Broncos, they're positioned to have, this great opportunity. And if they don't take the advantage of it, it's definitely their own fault. Bo Nix, I think he's already showed he can win. He can not get in the way of winning games, but now you have to give him the weapons to kind of empower him to take the next step. So yeah, that's what we're gonna leave the Broncos there. And again, the theme of this stream is good teams that can build. So all the other teams we're going to talk about today kind of are in a similar situation. So what team did we have next? Okay, yeah, we're saving the Texans for the last team. We're actually going to move on to Green Bay. So again, Green Bay, this is where they're at. We're going to check in on the DVOA for both sides of the ball. Offensively, number 8. And defensively, number 4. So the Packers ranked out pretty well in DVOA. Obviously, the eye test didn't quite look so favorable. Yeah, they didn't play the worst against the Eagles in the playoffs, but we kind of knew that the Packers weren't contenders this year. But again, a team that looked pretty good or like ranks pretty well in the EPA stat. If you look at what they're bringing back, they're basically bringing back the whole team. They're missing one of their interior defensive linemen, TJ Slayton. But I think Kenny Clark is definitely like Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt. Devontae Wyatt must not be developing well for him to not be a starter by now, but Kenny Clark is the guy there, and he's not even 30 yet. And then they're missing an inside linebacker. So they're bringing back most of this team. So they're good. They have to get better, but again, they're not losing things and they don't have to replace those things. They're going to have a chance to build on this. So when we look at their spending, where do the Packers rank? So the Packers are actually squished in here, but yeah, Packers in the middle of the pack for the most part in terms of spending, not that expensive of a roster. So the reason why they're bundled in with a team like the Broncos is because they're not particularly expensive. They made the playoffs last year, and they're bringing most of the team back. So when we think about what the Packers could do, I think the big thing for them offensively is they need one difference maker at the wide receiver position, which will then slide everybody else into the spots that they belong. I think their offensive line is solid. They obviously need a new center. That won't require the biggest investment in the world, but yeah, I think they're not positioned too bad offensively. I think the big thing is like, honestly, I think their need for growth is more just in how they approach playing football games. Like, I think they need to use Jacobs a little bit more. Like, he has to be a more important part of the offense. And I think they, oddly enough, have to be a bit more like Philadelphia, I guess you could say, or like Baltimore. Like, I think if they really became a physical run first football team, they have the backs to do so. If they were to become that type of team, they would be better positioned to win games when Love, has his off games. Because right now he's still a quarterback that has his ups and downs. You can have an easier time navigating the downs if you have a dominant running game. I don't think they're missing the pieces there to do so. I just think it's a matter of deciding to be that kind of a team. Maybe they could bolster parts of their offensive line, but for the most part, they seemed happy with Jenkins, Tom, and I think the right guard they were comfortable with him as well. So maybe another piece on the offensive line. You definitely need a receiver. Again, one receiver, like let's say for argument's sake, right? They go get T. Higgins. And then T. Higgins is your one, Jaden Reed is your two, Watson, Dobbs, anybody else, whoever, it's the three. And then everybody kind of slots into the spots a little bit more naturally. So that's really what I think they need to do. They don't need to do something crazy. Yeah, they just need to get a couple pieces offensively. Defensively, I mean, when we saw them go up against Philadelphia, I think one of the things that I felt pretty good about is the fact that their secondary, outside of McKinney, I don't think there was really anybody I was scared of. When it comes to their front seven, Gary is solid, but I think they need to upgrade aside from Gary. Looks like Lucas Van Ness hasn't developed into the starting pass rusher that people would expect him to be. So yeah, I think they need to get a better at the edge spot. I heard that this is Jair Alexander's last year. So you might have to replace him. But yeah, I think the Packers, their offseason is more about the defense than the offense. Like I said, I think you could maybe use one piece offensively. When it comes to a weapon, you need to just shore up the offensive line. That was, as is, pretty good last year. But yeah, defensively, if they could, again, marry a rush first approach to offense with a great defense, they're built to play in a place like Lambeau. They have a tremendous upside with Jordan Love and the way he can really get going when he gets hot. They would have a plethora of weapons. Yeah, I think the approach for them definitely has to be defense and just one weapon offensively. So again, that's why the Packers, they got bunched into the group that we're looking at today, the Broncos, the Packers, the Bucs, and the Texans, because this is a team that, again, they made the playoffs. They had a fairly respectable level of achievement last year. They're bringing most of that team back next year, and they're not a particularly expensive team. So there should be upside. Again, it doesn't mean that they're going to get better. It just means that they have the opportunity to do so. And that'll take us into our next team, which is Tampa Bay. Where are we at? Okay. Tampa Bay is the next team we're looking at. So we're just going to do a little DVOA check. So they had the fifth offense. In this, the EPA. We're looking at the fifth offense. And then defensively, the 19th defense. So Todd Bowles' unit definitely didn't live up to Todd Bowles' reputation. The offense carried them last year. It was kind of a weird year from that standpoint because they had a ton of injuries, which kind of makes it hard to tell what exactly are they bringing back next year. But if you look at who they're losing, you're looking at a lot of their depth. Like, remember, for the people who weren't here yesterday, the players in green are the players that are being lost to free agency. If you're looking at starters, they're losing one guard. They're losing Godwin, who missed a ton of time last year. They basically played without Godwin. You're losing Levante David, who is a solid linebacker, right? Still amazing at this age. And you're losing an edge rusher, Anthony Nelson, who I don't even remember. Like, I don't ever remember hearing that name. Like, I remember Yaya Diaby. I remember Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I do not know who Anthony Nelson is. So ultimately, I think they're bringing back, especially when you consider the fact that they're losing Godwin, and Godwin barely played last year down the stretch. I mean, I don't think he played at all down the stretch. I forget when he was out. I think it was maybe week 9. But yeah, they're bringing back the bulk of what they were last year. Then when we go to look at their level of investment, again, this is an original thing I put up with. They are just under the middle. They're just under the average here in terms of guaranteed money on the books. So they have opportunities to spend, and they definitely should make use of that opportunity defensively. I think in terms of what they are from an offense, I think you have to run it back with these running backs. No pun intended. But when I think about this Bucks rushing attack, it's one of the better rushing attacks that I've seen from the Bucks in a long time. I'm trying to think through. I've seen Ronald Jones's, and Leonard Fournette was good, but Leonard, like, playoff Lenny was where it was at. That wasn't a consistent thing. Who was Jameis's running backs? I don't even remember those guys. Point is though, Bucky Irving held it down. Was unaware that we sucked. Damn. The guy needed to post Chelsea nap. Vita Vea will save the Bucks 20 sacks next season. That's wild. That's super wild. But yeah, man, the Bucks need to. The Bucks. I don't think they need to be worrying about getting a new running back. Offensively, they barely had receivers healthy last year, and they still kind of made it work. Obviously, they can bolster that, but that's not like a life or death kind of a thing. I think the big thing for them is that they better hope that their internal promotion, because they lost Liam Cohen, they had better hope that their internal promotion works out. But they got to figure this defense out, man. You have a defensive head coach. Todd Bowles has been, he's led a lot of great defenses over the years. Been in this organization a long time. Kind of surprising to see the defense fall off the way it did last year, but this defense did not live up to the billing. So when I look at this team here, it looks like Yaya Diaby is the only like functional edge rusher they're bringing back next year. So they need to really invest in pass rushers. The interior of the defensive line should be okay with Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey. And then in the secondary, you're probably okay with Winfield and Whitehead, but I think the corners need to be better. I'm not familiar with Tyke Smith, but I think Jamel Dean is only okay, and Zion McCollum probably isn't good enough. So secondary and edge rush. And when you think about the fact that they weren't a great defense last year, if they're weak at this in the secondary and weak rushing the passer, that explains why. And I think that's definitely where the focus of the offseason needs to be. Maybe you concern yourself with getting one more weapon. But I'm not really stressing about too much other than that offensively. I would want to see this team go crazy with investing in the trenches, and it's a good draft to do so. Really upgrade the corner spots, and then see what Todd Bowles can do. I'll be honest here. Do the two running backs play like R&B? Hold on. Do the two running backs play like running back or more halfback? What are we talking about? Rachaad White and Bucky Irving? So the thing is like, I think what you're trying to ask is more about their playing style. Sean Tucker here, that's like the power back that they have. I was kind of surprised too to see how much Bucky Irving played last year. I never thought Bucky Irving would be like a bell cow, and I still don't necessarily think he's all the way a bell cow, but they do have a complimentary rusher in Sean Tucker. And he had a couple good games. So again, I wouldn't waste my time trying to add to the running back room. This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They really haven't been a great franchise at the running back position for a while anyways. Just keep it pushing with these players and focus on the defense. That's what I would look at. So yeah, again, Tampa Bay is in the pocket with these other teams because they made the playoffs. Frankly, they probably should have won that playoff game. That fumble was ridiculous. And they're bringing back the bulk of that team that made the playoffs last year, and they're not overly invested. They're a little bit below the average in terms of guaranteed money on the books. So when I look at their team, I'm going to take a look at, I got a note here for the players that they might have to consider extending. So they got Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Vita Vea, and their right tackle, Luke Goedeke. Goddamn. Okay. Okay. When it comes to those players, obviously they have to figure something out for Baker Mayfield. Mike Evans, the tricky thing about that is that re-signing Mike Evans might not even cost that much money. So you might think in your head, oh, you have to pay your wide receiver one. But at his age, like, you won't have to be giving him like market setting money. That might not be the worst thing. Vita Vea, is he pushing 30? Yeah, he is. Kind of a similar situation. Like you might oddly enough get some bang for your buck from the fact that you have to let Godwin walk. Shout out to, I think this is the first time I'm seeing you in the chat. Welcome to the chat, Andrew. Andrew says you have to let Godwin walk. I agree. Are you a Bucks fan, by the way? But I definitely agree. You have to let Godwin walk. The needs that they have defensively are way more important than having what you would have to look at as a third receiver, because you saw what Mike Evans and McMillan were as a 1 and a 2 last year, and it was sufficient. Like it was okay in terms of what they wanted to do offensively last year. You can fill that void of a wide receiver 3 with a draft pick much easier. Nowadays you can get solid receiver value in the middle of the draft. But yeah, no, I agree. I would not pay Mike Godwin. I know football well. I know the Bucks. Oh, we got another Eagles fan in here. Good to see you, bro. Okay, so Andrew, I'm gonna have an Eagles only stream doing the same concept at some point. But yeah, shout out to you, bro. But yeah, we're gonna wrap up the Bucks. Like I said, well positioned to invest. Bringing back the bulk of their team that got them to the playoffs last year. They should have an opportunity to get better. Last team we're going to look at today is the Texans. So I'm going to find where the Texans are, briefly go over the outlook for the Texans, and then I'm going to get Jared on the stream here, our resident Texans fan. So again, when you look at what the Texans are bringing back, they're bringing back all their starters. I mean, hilariously, they're losing almost every backup defensively, right? But they're bringing back every starter except Stephon Diggs and an interior defensive lineman. I don't even think this is their better interior defensive lineman, Farukasi. And then obviously Stephon Diggs tore his ACL and didn't play the bulk of the year. So they are bringing most of this team back. And then when we look at where they were at in terms of EPA, wait, am I missing? This is offensive EPA. The Houston Texans were 24th and the defense was number 6. So for people who are maybe familiar with how I was talking about the Texans for a long time, bro, I thought they were trash last year. I thought they were completely garbage because of how bad the offense was. I kind of wasn't paying attention to the defense, but they had the 24th EPA offensively. A lot of people are going to talk about how that is the issue there is the play caller, because they got rid of Slowick. I think the bigger issue is the offensive line. I think Slowick was a bit of a scapegoat. I think what's it called? Yeah, I think the offensive line is the bigger issue. I think Mixon did well. The receivers were obviously banged up. Collins and Tank Dell next year. I mean, again, I'm just hoping Tank Dell stays healthy, but from a weapon standpoint, they should be okay. Mixon, you probably want to get can Diggs be cut? Diggs is already a free agent. But yeah, to draft Igbuka. Oh man, letting Stroud throw to Igbuka again, that would be a home run for sure. But yeah, I'm hoping Tank Dell stays healthy. But even if you have Dell as your third receiver, you can draft a second receiver. You'll be great at the receiver position. They just need to get some offensive linemen. I think they got a Sean McVay disciple calling the plays offensively. Oddly enough, I don't think that leans into them needing like great receiver depth, because if you think about how the Rams function offensively, like you want a superstar 1, a competent 2, and that's really all you need that's all the offense ends up using. So I don't think they're that far off from a weapon standpoint. Like draft 1 receiver, call it a day. They got to figure out the offensive line. Now, defensively, they obviously rank pretty highly, and from a stats standpoint, they look pretty good in the playoffs against the Chiefs. And they're bringing that whole defense back. So the assumption is that they should be able to get better. I'm looking at players in the 30s. So how this website works is if a player's name is in all caps, that means they're 30. So their only 30-year-old defensive players are the safety Jimmy Ward and the edge rusher Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter doesn't look like he's falling off anytime soon. Jimmy Ward, I think he is pretty injury prone. So maybe they could do a little bit better there. But looking to see if they have to pay anybody. it doesn't look like they have any big extensions like coming up within the next year. So yeah, Texans position to get better. I think that last year did a good job of exposing the issues with their personnel offensively, and they should be able to get better. The focal point here is like, I think you should draft a receiver. I think you should draft a running back, but you should really focus on the offensive line. That's where the money should be spent for talent that's ready to play right now. As far as who the exact players would be, you're probably looking at center, right guard, right tackle. I think Titus Howard is paid at left guard. Laramie Tunsil obviously is supposed to be great. Now, I heard he didn't have the best year last year, but I don't think you start at replacing Laramie Tunsil. You probably go center, right guard, right tackle, but I think it's pretty clear what they have to do. You bolster the offensive line. You hope the play caller is good next year, and you run it back. I thought he had one more. They could use a better linebacker or two. I mean, yeah, like the thing is, they also did what they did last year, missing Al-Shaair for 3 games. I think Christian Harris is going into the last year of his deal. And again, linebacker is like probably the least expensive. Linebacker and safety are the least expensive defensive positions. So it shouldn't be that expensive to sign a linebacker if that's what they want to do. Again, the big thing for them is they have to really focus on this offensive line. And if they do, they should go back to being a pretty good offense. They're like similar to the kind of offense that they had 2 years ago. And if you marry that with the kind of defense that they had all year last year, they should be, back to being a good team. I kind of think about the Houston Texans of last year, like the Eagles of 2 years ago, where I think the big thing that season does for you is like after, I guess, a surprisingly good year, you maybe are out of touch with what your flaws are. And then one season really teaches you about the flaws in your personnel and maybe the flaws in your coaching staff and how you go into approaching games. And when that happens, you get another off season to really figure things out. And I think that the Texans should have a good year next year. My team is in the same sentence as the Bears. That hurts. Don't worry. But yeah, joining the stream now, I got Jared. Go ahead. What's yours? Talk about the Texans. Yo, there's hella background noise. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, what's up?
Nothing much.
Tell us about the Texans.
I just hope we get better next year with defense and offense.
You said defense?
No, I meant the offense.
Oh yeah.
The O-line needs to get better.
For sure. And then I think the big thing at the running back position is, and I think the same thing about the Eagles as well with Saquon is, I think when you have an older, I say hilariously, but when you have a running back that's on their second contract and they have a really good year where they get the ball a lot, you should just kind of assume that there's going to be an injury next year. So I think that they should probably draft somebody just so that they could get by if Mixon has to miss a month. And then offensively, when it comes to the receiver position, they're losing Robert Woods as well. I don't even think he had that big of a role when the receivers got hurt. I think Mechie stepped up last year. You still have Mechie, you still have Tank Dell, so you really only need to add one more receiver. Good stuff. Yeah, no, we're gonna be here, man. From this point until free agency, preview streams. Good to see you, bro. But yeah, man, it's all offensive line. It's so funny. The Texans, I think, they have such a simple offseason ahead of them. That's why I'll be really disappointed with the Texans if they're not good.
I hope they improve.
Man, yeah, they should be a much better team next year.
I'm just surprised we made it this far.
In terms of
that far last year, the playoffs.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was more about the decisions, I guess. The division. I think
that it's kind of wonky.
They let you guys get through pretty easily. So yeah, I think that's the bigger thing with the Texans.
And we'll lose Diggs in the offseason, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe go after T. Higgins?
Oh, nah, I don't think you guys need to spend those type of resources at the receiver position, bro. I think you guys need to spend big money on the offensive line. But yeah, the Texans are up here. So again, why did I group these teams together? You got the Texans right here, slightly above average. The Packers are right there. And then the Broncos and Buccaneers are right there, slightly below average. So when you look at all these teams here in this cluster, right? When you pick up, like, I look at them differently than the Falcons and the Giants, obviously, because and then even the other teams here, you got the Panthers, the Jets. Like, I look at those four teams differently because, they're in the middle of the pack in terms of spending, but they actually made the playoffs and they're actually bringing back most of their team into this year. And that's why I have these groupings for these teams when I look at the offseason outlook, is that, it's pretty similar. You're bringing back the bulk of a playoff team. You have an opportunity to spend money. Like, all these four teams I talked about today, they got to get better. There's no excuse. If they fail to get better, that's a huge failure on the team.
Well, my Texans are failures sometimes, so it doesn't surprise me.
If I had to stake who I think will get better and who won't, I'm thinking that the Texans will. I'm thinking that the Packers. I'm thinking that the Broncos won't, the Texans will, the Packers will, and the Buccaneers won't. I kind of think the Buccaneers are in a tough spot with their offensive coordinator. They just had to do an internal hire because they didn't expect to lose Cohen. They thought they successfully retained Cohen, but yeah.
Yeah, Chris Godwin was out week 9 and the rest of the season.
Yeah. You got any other comments, thoughts on the Texans? Because unironically, I was probably gonna wrap up soon because we have another stream that we're gonna do tonight. I have it set for 8:00 in half an hour, but I'll probably, whenever I finish this, I'll probably start it in like 5 minutes after that, and we're gonna run right through it because I have a third stream to do tonight. What's that?
Question: was a Texans hater, even though he's not in our division.
Who's that?
Well, he's a Chargers fan.
Yeah, he's a Chargers fan.
And he hates the Texans for some reason.
Honestly, I think he just hates generally. Like, General has a lot of hate in his heart. Oh yeah, General, I've been meaning to tell you. You know what I think? The craziest shot that I called out of nowhere with the Super Bowl? Do you remember during the AFC Championship game when I was like, guys, I think Kansas City might be the NFL Drake? And literally, I think Jen Will's question was like, what kind of drugs are you on? Like, that was his reaction in the chat. Everybody was like, yo, what is he cooking? And hilariously, Drake and the Chiefs both got belt to ass on Super Bowl Sunday. And I remember looking at that and I'm like, man, that was the craziest shot that I've ever called. That was like a full court heave, and it just somehow, some way went in.
And we beat the Chargers. I think he's mad because we beat the Chargers in the playoffs.
Genwell is denying the allegations, bro.
That's a lie because we beat him in the playoffs last year.
No, so what did he say that makes you think he hates them?
There's a comment that he said, "You Texans fan."
No, he says, "Bro, I don't hate the Texans."
Oh, he did.
Oh, he said, "Nah, man, that was the pass." Fair enough, bro. Fair enough. But yeah, shout out to everybody in here. I'm about to wrap this stream up, and then I'm gonna start the next stream on the channel in like 5 minutes. So click the channel, hit the like button first, but then click the channel, open up the other stream, and I'll see you guys right there. We're gonna, again, we're doing this in like a logical order. We looked at the contenders that can build. We looked at the good teams that can build. We're about to look at the bad teams that are well positioned to build. So it's the Colts, the Panthers, and the Bears. We have teams that are picking, I believe they all pick in the top 10 or maybe top 11. No, I think they're all top 10 in the draft. No, I think the Colts are like 12. Anyways, they're not playoff teams, but they're possession to get better. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at. Like I said, like this video and then open up that other link. You know what? Actually, I will find a way. I will find a link and I will put it in the chat right now. So yeah, here it is, people. You can like this video, click this link in the chat right now, and then hang out there. I'll be there in like 5 minutes. We're going to get right back into it. Big up everybody in here. I'll see you guys in a few minutes.